Before we get started, I want to take a moment to care for our listeners. This episode of Iron and Empathy includes real-life stories and experiences that can be heavy or hard to hear for some. We talk openly about trauma, violence, and personal struggle. Listener discretion is advised, and this episode may not be appropriate for younger audiences. Please take care of yourself and listen in a way that feels right for you. Thank you. With me today, I have a very, very special guest, Mr. Aaron Stark. Aaron Stark is a nationally recognized speaker and mental health advocate who uses his lived experience to help prevent violence and promote hope, connection, and early intervention. As a troubled and isolated teenager, Stark once stood on the brink of committing a school shooting. Today, he is a devoted father of 4 who has dedicated his life to helping others find a path away from violence and toward purpose, belonging, and mental wellness.
My first memory that I had in my entire life, the place where I start my whole existence, is I'm laying on my mom's bloody body and looking up at my father, and he has an X-shaped tire iron in his hand. And I'm screaming at him, "You just killed my mom." And she wasn't dead, but she was beaten, bloody, and unconscious. And that's where I start my whole life. And so for the next 9 months, I went on a campaign of what I call scorched earth, which is the most toxic time I've ever had in my life, where I was the toxic one. I became as offensive and disgusting as I possibly could be to everybody I was around. I specifically was targeting people that said that they liked me, that said that I was a good person. If you liked me, I was going to figure out what you liked about me and break it. Whatever you liked the most about me, I was going to ruin. So I walked into a room that fundamentally changed the course of my life and altered my very core of my being, that my friend put up in 5 minutes because her friend was having a birthday. But you never know what little tiny bits of kindness that you do that can completely change someone else's life. So if you're hearing this and you know anybody that's went through anything like what I've talked to, even a little bit, if you feel like we need to give love to the ones that we think deserve it the least, because they need it the most.
Welcome to Iron and Empathy, the podcast where we explore what it truly takes to build strong, resilient teams in high-stakes environments. I'm your host, Drew Moldenhauer. Iron and Empathy is proudly sponsored by Blue Ethos Specialized Training, a national leader in workplace violence prevention, active threat preparedness, and de-escalation training. At Blue Ethos, we don't just focus on safety. We help organizations improve workplace culture by strengthening communication, increasing situational awareness, and creating environments where people feel supported, empowered, and prepared to intervene early before problems escalate. Thanks for being here. Let's get into today's conversation. With me today, I have a very, very special guest, Mr. Aaron Stark. Aaron Stark is a nationally recognized speaker and mental health advocate who uses his lived experience to help prevent violence and promote hope, connection, and early intervention. As a troubled and isolated teenager, Stark once stood on the brink of committing a school shooting. Today, he is a devoted father of 4 who has dedicated his life to helping others find a path away from violence and toward purpose, belonging, and mental wellness. Following the tragic Parkland school shooting, Stark wrote a powerful open letter titled, "I Was Almost a School Shooter." The letter was shared with 9 News in Denver and became the featured story on Next with Kyle Clark. The story quickly gained national attention, amassing more than 17 million views and launching Stark into full-time advocacy for mental health awareness and violence prevention. Since then, Stark has been featured by major national media outlets and has written for the Washington Post. He is also the speaker behind the viral TEDx talk, "I Was Almost a School Shooter," which has garnered over 14 million views and is used as an educational resource in schools, college, universities, and government institutions, including the U.S. Department of Education. Through his work, Aaron Stark delivers a powerful message: early intervention, human connection, and empathy can save lives, and everyone matters. Aaron, I really appreciate you being here with us today. Why don't we just dive right on into it, and why don't you just tell us about your story, which I have heard before and I really like, and it's such a powerful, powerful message, and I just love for you to go and share that with our listeners here today.
Thank you for having me, Drew. Thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Hi, everybody. My name's Aaron Stark. Just a little bit of a trigger warning before we start this. It does get a bit intense, so anybody that's listening, just know, take care of yourself first. Make sure that you're watching your own mental health and your own mental safety. Some of the things I bring up, especially in the beginning, get pretty intense, but I promise that the story ends a lot happier than it begins. Like, I was almost a school shooter, but today I'm in a much better place. But I guess the best place to start is I like to start at the very beginning. I mean, the my first memory that I have in my entire life, the place where I start my whole existence, is I'm laying on my mom's bloody body and looking up at my father, and he has an X-shaped tire iron in his hand. And I'm screaming at him, "You just killed my mom." And she wasn't dead, but she was beaten, bloody, and unconscious. And that's where I start my whole life. That's the very first memory I have. And my father was a ex-Vietnam vet. I guess he was one of the people that was on a boat outside of Cambodia launching rockets, and he went through some horrible stuff. And by the time I was born in '79, he was just a drug addicted monster, and he would he would beat and rape my mom. He would track us across state to state. Living with him was basically like living in a Stephen King movie, like living in a really horrible, all the worst kinds of things of an after school horror flick. That's what it was like living with him. And after 5 years of that, of really harsh, abject violence, my mom escaped him, quote unquote, and sent me and my brother. I was really young. It was me and my older brother. He's 2 years older than I am. So it was us two for the longest time. And then she sent us up to Oregon for a year to go stay with grandparents, to go be with family as an escape to get away from my dad. And that escape wasn't really an escape, because I believe trauma rolls downhill, and that's the mountain my trauma was rolling down from. And so the escape she sent me to go be with was actually to go be with my pedophile rapist great grandfather and my pedophile rapist uncle, who didn't molest me or my brother, but were currently in progress of molesting all the women of the previous two generations of when I went up there. And so after having to witness my pedophile rapist uncle assault a 4-year-old and beat the mom of the 4-year-old and then kick his pregnant sister in the stomach, I finally got sent back from that supposed escape. And when I came back to Colorado, my mom had left my dad and got with my stepdad. And my stepdad, so my birth father, was like living in a Stephen King movie. My stepdad was like living in Scarface. It was crack cocaine and crime and running from the police and drugs everywhere, money and people all over the place, with just lots and lots of criminal activity. And my parents' modus operandi, the thing that they like to do, they would hijack delivery trucks that were going to like a store, and they would take all the stuff out of it and sell it at flea markets. And so I have memories of being really young and being at a flea market with like 30 cases of stainless steel scissors. And I don't know why I'm there selling them, but my parents are selling just whatever. And I would also have, because they would steal stuff from toy stores, I would have like every Thundercats toy and every He-Man toy and all the play sets and all the stuff that went with them. But I would also have someone burst into my bedroom with a duffel bag and throw it at me. So we got 15 minutes to grab all your crap. We need to get out of here, because there was police at the door. We're getting evicted, or there was whatever, people fighting. Like needed to get out. Authorities were there looking for us. We needed to go. And so the system that they developed, mind you, this was late 80s to early 90s. So it was before the age of the internet. So records didn't catch up the way they do today. So the system that they had developed was they would move from Oregon to Colorado, and then back to Oregon, then back to Colorado, and lie about their whole life. So they would like move to Oregon, lie about their job history, lie about their rental history, lie about where they were from, lie about their name, all of that, and get a job, get a house. 6 months later, records catch up and they get evicted. They lose their job, or in that time they get caught because they're stealing or doing drugs or whatever. Like they were crackheads. And so when they would move, wash, rinse, repeat. And so bounce back and forth. And so I never was at a school longer than 6 months in my whole life. I went to between 30 and 40 different schools in my life. I was constantly the new kid. I never had any kind of permanence anywhere. Everything, I was always new, but I was also very dirty and smelly and nasty because I didn't have clean clothes. I wasn't taking care of myself. The dynamic of growing up, like my brother, he was utilitarian. My parents, they got heavily deep into the 1980s, 90s crack epidemic. They were crackheads, literally. They would whip out the flat electric skillet in the living room with the vials and the water and the baking soda and just rock up the crack right in the middle of the living room. And their fun fact, one of the places that they got most of their drugs from was from a sheriff who was stealing drugs from the evidence locker and coming and taking it to my house so they could break it up and sell it. So I have memories of a fully kitted up, uniformed, armed police officer on my couch smoking crack rock. But their drugs constantly, they were crackheads. So in this moving back and forth, they were crackheads. They weren't very useful to themselves. My brother was the kind of kid that would take apart stuff. Like he was the mechanic kid. He was the one that would like take apart your skateboard and fix it back together, take apart the toaster, put it back together, like always taking stuff apart and fixing it. And so he was useful. When stuff happened and we were getting evicted and things were going down, he became really useful to the crackheads. He became the one that had to fix the problem. So like if here's an example of what that happened. The sheriff shows up. My parents are at the bar getting hammered, drunk, getting high, whatever. And my brother's like 9, I'm about 7. And the sheriff is throwing all of our stuff in the lawn because we're literally getting evicted at that moment. I was moving all the stuff out into the lawn and the mud. And so my brother is scrambling, trying to follow people around to get things taken care of. He's the one that's trying to solve the problem. I'm the problem that has to be solved. Because while my brother is useful to the crackheads, I am the shy, sweet kid who's into comic books and musicals and science and reading, and I'm not useful at all to the crackheads. Not only are my likes ignored, they're attacked and ridiculed. Like I'm made fun of all the time, and made fun of because I was fat, and dirty, and smelly. Like I was just ridiculed constantly, mostly by my parents. They made fun of me. And when I confronted my stepdad about why he made fun of me, he said, well, I do it to try to make you a better guy. I'm like, well, you're failing at that, dude. So that constant degradation, mind you, I'm still not even 10 years old at this point. And we're bouncing from state to state. And I've never had any kind of permanence. Now, growing into my early teen years, that the chaos in home just continues to escalate. I start self-harming right around the age of 13, 14 years old, because first off, I became homeless right around the same time because I couldn't take the drugs and the violence and the crime at home anymore. So I started living on the streets. And I started bouncing from friend's house to friend's house. And at first it was, I could stay there for a couple days. Then I could stay there for like a week. Then I could stay there for a couple days. Then I couldn't even stay there for like an afternoon. Because if I sit on the couch and I stand up, the parents have to clean the residue because I'm leaving a stain. So I'm quickly going down my own slide of degradation. And in that, as I become homeless, I was like 90% homeless because all my stuff couldn't take it on with me. I couldn't stay at the crackhead's house very long. So as I'm homeless, I'm kind of bouncing from place to place. And I find that when I cut myself, my life back at that stage, I kind of described like living in a mosh pit. Like I'm in this sloshing back and forth. I don't really have any control over where I'm living. I don't have any control over the violence. I come home on any given day and I walk into the worst kinds of extreme depravity, like my parents digging through the carpet looking for crack rock and then beating each other for it. And I came home one day, sat on my bedroom, no one had saw me come home, sat in my bedroom, and I hear a rumble outside my door. I open up my door. My stepdad has my mom up against the wall and has her dangling a couple inches off the floor with a hand around her throat. Then I get up, I grab him, I pull him off of her, I start hitting him. Next thing I know, my mom's smashing plates over my head because I got involved in the fight. And now I'm getting attacked by both of them because I tried to stop the violence. So I drop him, I go back to my game, I just sit down, start playing video games. Like constantly living on that fight or flight response, constantly dealing with the worst kinds of drug use and anger, constantly dealing with people going from smiling to fighting. And I'm talking like vicious fighting, like throwing whole stacks of plates at each other, stabbing each other in the gut with doorknobs. Like If you take apart or doorknob, the gears on the inside of a doorknob, those are really vicious if you use them as a weapon. And so they would just constantly in this kind of depravity. And so my life was like living in this tsunami, like living in a mosh pit. I don't know if you've been to heavy metal concerts, but if you've ever, I'm sure you've at least seen a mosh pit. You've been in a mosh pit yourself?
I haven't been in a mosh pit myself, but I have some friends that have, and I know what you're talking about when it comes to that. But if you could describe it to people, that'd be fantastic.
It's this big swirling mass of people. It's like a big circle of people running around and slamming into each other in the violent music. And that's violent itself. Okay. But the really violent part is the couple of rows in between the mosh pit and the stage, especially if you're at a really small venue where the crowd isn't very big. And you get that, I used to call it the sardine can. When I would go to heavy metal concerts when I was a teenager, I would go to that place and I'd stand in that spot, a couple of rows in between the mosh pit and the stage. It would get so tight and cramped and compact, could kind of vertically crowd surf. You could kind of stand there straight, take your feet up off the ground, and the violence of the crowd would shift you back and forth. And you could kind of just like ride the tide of the violence around and just slosh back and forth. That's a good analogy for what my life was back then. Like I'm just picking my feet up and letting the violence of my life slosh me around. But I discovered that when I cut myself, it calmed those kinds of waves. And it started as kind of an emotional regulatory thing to kind of deal with that sloshing back and forth. I knew it was bad. I knew it was destructive, but it was real and it was mine. But I didn't really have anything else that fit those descriptions. Nothing else in my world felt like it was real. Like I would literally sit and tell my friends, I feel like my life is a movie that's passing me by and I'm not part of it. Like I'm just watching my life pass me by as a movie and it sucks. And I just felt very disembodied a lot of times. And so that cutting myself kind of calmed the waves, and it started as that kind of emotional regulatory thing, but it quickly spiraled into more deep and more serious self-harm and deeper cuts and more severe cuts. And the response that I got from that, from my family, from my mom particularly, was laughter. It was the times where I would sit up in my bedroom cutting myself and my mom walked past and laughed at me and literally laughed. And as she's going down the stairs, she goes, sits on the couch and I follow her down the stairs facing her. And I say, "You think this is a joke?" And I pull out a box cutter razor blade and I start hacking at my arm, like hacking hard, and blood just starts pouring everywhere. And she just sits there and stares at me. And I go back up in my bedroom. I sat on my bed, wrapped a t-shirt around my arm that instantly turned beet red, sat there, picked up my game, and she never even came to check on me. And everyone went to the doctor and never got stitches milk. And so, like, I felt ephemeral. I felt like you could just walk right through me, like intangible. And so as I'm getting homeless, as I'm like 90% homeless, I gather a group of what I call disaster groupies. Okay. There were a bunch of kids kind of living vicariously through my darkness. By this time, I'm going to a high school here in Denver, going to a high school, quote unquote. I only attended high school for one little bit of my freshman year and was at the school the rest of the time, just avoiding truancy officers. But I gathered this group of friends. Okay. And they were a group of kids that kind of like lived vicariously through each other's darkness. There was one of the kids whose dad paid the rent for a house and his dad bought all the food at this house, but dad didn't live at the house. Dad lived with dad's girlfriend. So this was like a teenage flop house, teenage party house. So it ended up being like 15 kids just partying all the time. And at that group, instead of talking about girls or sports or normal teenage stuff, I guess we started talking about that, but it quickly spiraled into talking more about the darker things. And I'm talking like, if you're going to kill 10 people, how would you do it? If you're going to shoot up a school, what would you do? And looking back, it was a bunch of depressed kids navigating depression without any kind of adult supervision. But in the moment, we were just seeing how far we could go off the edge. And mind you, remember the time frame where we're at. We're in the mid 90s. So this was like Crash TV, Jerry Springer, Marilyn Manson. Like that was the kind of era of that, the 90s, the extreme nature of everything. And we were taking everything to the extreme. Okay. And so For now at the time frame I'm talking about is between the age of about 14 to 15. And so for about a year there, I had a stasis where I was living basically three lives. And this is a good spot to bring in the only real positive portion of my whole story is a kid named Mike that I met when I was 12 and he was 10. And he lived at the opposite end of one of the many houses, at the opposite end of the blocks, one of the many houses that we moved to. And we met at a comic book shop and we met playing the original Mortal Kombat 1 video game in the arcade. Tell you exactly what this is going on. Right. And so we bonded one day over playing that and buying comic books. And I went to his house and pretty much never left. Like we just hooked up and became best buds. And as I'm in the middle of all this time, my crackhead family's bouncing from state to state. He never moved. He had the total opposite life that I had. He had very well-to-do parents, very well off, very well supported, peaceful house, big 4-story house that his mom still lives in. Sadly, his dad just passed away last year. But he would do stuff like write a Christmas list and get the stuff on his Christmas list. So it would blow my mind. I didn't know you could do that. And so as I'm bouncing around being this crazy nomad, he stayed at one place. So I memorized his phone number. So, and knew right where he was. So anytime I was in Denver, I knew I had some like home base to be. Okay. So for about a year there, from about 14 to 15, I was living 3 different lives where for a small portion of my day, I was absolutely worthless when I had to go to the house of my parents and recharge and grab some stuff. I was just a worthless piece of crap, the worst kind of thing in the world, getting nothing but abuse. If I walked in, I was most likely to fight somebody. It was just, there was no positive there. Okay. And then I'd say about 10% of my day, 80% of my day, I was in this disaster groupie house where I'm using that pain that I was going through in the abuse of my family, use that as a party favor to kind of celebrate and entertain the kids that I'm with. And it would turn me into this dark unicorn because the hell that I'm going through made their hell pale in comparison. Like I was going into further extremes in my daily life than they would even read about or see on anything like that. It's just my day to day. I could go give them stories and evidence of the hell that I was going through that blew their mind. And I wasn't the only one, though. Admittedly, there was 2 or 3 other kids that had a similar kind of upbringing as mine. So, because depression is not a singular problem, everybody has this stuff happen. And so most of the day I was at that house, kind of using that pain as a party favor. And then another 10% of that day, I got to go over to Mike's house and be a normal kid and just exist for a while. Okay. And that was the way it was. And I was living at that house. So that's the way it was for about a year. And then that house ends in a big explosion where we're having this big party. One of the kids that we were hanging out with, he had a birthday. And so, of course, we're a bunch of high school kids. Birthday, somebody we know as a band. So we have a teenage flop house. Of course, we have a band playing. Band's all rocking it out. We got kids all over the place. I had a day job at the time. I'm working at a pizza place down the street. So my manager happens to be an LSD dealer. So I buy a bunch of LSD from my manager, and I've got a bunch of kids tripping acid. So got like 15 kids tripping acid. You got a band playing, knocks on the door. Parents are there. Party's over. Everybody has to go home. All the parents break up the party. Everybody else gets to go home. I don't have a home to go to because at the time, my parents were in the absolute worst of a crack binge, like the depths of hell is where my parents are. And so I don't have anywhere to go. And so the only 2 last places that were my last 2 refuges, if I didn't have anywhere else to be, there was a field behind this restaurant, Casa Bonita. If you ever see the TV show South Park, they actually did the whole episode on Casa Bonita. The guys actually bought the restaurant where it's this big pink Mexican restaurant with cliff divers and a guy in a gorilla suit. That really is what it's like. But behind that restaurant, there was a field. And in that field, there was a little dip. And if you laid in the dip, you couldn't see me if you're driving on the street. So it didn't look like there was a body there. And so I could stay in that field if the weather was good. If the weather was bad, I would go to Mike's tool shed because behind Mike's house, his parents kept a big recliner chair in storage. And I would sneak into his tool shed and I would sleep there sometimes. And occasionally Mike would sneak me down food. And so, yeah, finally comes to a night where after I'm now, that whole house ends. I have nowhere to be. I end up in Mike's tool shed and I'm there for a couple nights. And night comes where I am cutting myself so bad that there's a pool of blood forming on the ground underneath me. And I think to myself, I got to get some help or I'm going to die. If I don't do something, I'm going to die. And so in my life, one of the main people that tried to intervene was social services. They tried to catch us a couple times. So I thought, hey, I'll call them. I'll call the social services department on myself. And so I did. When dawn came, I knocked on Mike's back door and I borrowed bus fare and a phone book from his mom. And I set an appointment for that afternoon. I called for social services. And so it was dawn when I called, or like 3 or 4 in the afternoon when the meeting was. By the time I got there, they also called my mom, and they had brought my mom in. And so we sit around this big round table, and there's me on one side, and my mom's next to me, and counselors on the other side. And they say, so what are we here for? What's the problem? And I pull out a box cutter razor blade, show fresh cuts to my arms. I throw the blade on the table, fresh blood on it. I said, that's what I'm here for. I feel like there's nothing. I feel like there's nothing for me in this world. I feel like I'm at my absolute bottom. Now, my mom, who was the most practiced liar I ever knew, she could sell ice to an Eskimo. She would tell him, he's just doing it for attention. It's no big deal. He's just doing it to get a rise out of people. We can take care of it. It's no big deal. He just does it to get attention from people. Which these days I find really ironic because yes, I was doing it for attention, but that's not the attention I was looking for. I was screaming out for somebody to please see me before I fell off the edge of life. And that was not what happened. Instead, they sent me home with my mom. And so we get a couple of blocks away from the place, and she turns to me and snarls and says, next time you should do a better job, I'll buy you the razor blades. Okay. You think all right. So up until that point, I kind of was wrapping that darkness around me like a blanket. Like I was still the shy, sweet kid into comic books and musicals and toys and fun times and stuff. And I would just kind of wrap that darkness around me. And I found that the more spiky and hard I could make it, it would keep most normal people away. But it turned into like a winnowing thing. It kept everybody else close. Like it would like boil away the friend group. It was a hard, spiky shell, but it was a shell that I put on. Okay. But sitting in that car next to my mom, when she told me that I should have done a better job killing myself, and next time she'd help me. Okay, you think I'm a monster? I'll show you what a monster is now. I wasn't wearing that necklace anymore. I dove straight into it. And so for the next 9 months, I went on a campaign of what I call scorched earth, which is the most toxic time I've ever had in my life, where I was the toxic one. I became as offensive and disgusting as I possibly could be to everybody I was around. I specifically was targeting people that said that they liked me, that said that I was a good person. If you liked me, I was going to figure out what you liked about me and break it. Whatever you liked the most about me, I was going to ruin it. And I was going to offend you in whatever way I possibly could. I would say the most racist and sexist and disgusting things, not because I was racist or sexist, but because it offended the person I was talking to. I didn't have a limit. And if it offended the person I was dealing with, then I was going to go to that limit. So it didn't really matter to me what the offense was if I had to make the offense to ruin my relationship with you. And so I went through 9 months of that. Yeah, go ahead.
Aaron, just quick question for you on that. I'm just curious, with going back to that, when you're saying that scorched earth, would you say that was kind of the breaking point, was that you can remember in your memory, was that altercation with your mom in that car?
So that's what made me to go to scorched earth, but we're still not quite all the way there yet. We're still, see, that's actually a great point, because this is one of the things that illustrates that this kind of slide is a process. It's not usually just a single incident. It's usually a stacking on of multiple things that lead you down this path. And anybody looking out from the outside could say, oh, that might be the spot. Oh, that might be the spot. Oh, that might be the spot. And then eventually that really is the spot. And that's the terrifying thing, is that there could have been a breaking point at any one of these little elements, but the real breaking point comes in just a bit. So now I'm in that scorched earth time, okay, where I am burning down every relationship I can. And even in that phase, I charmed my way in and snuck my way in to as many family members as I could, and gathered every picture of me, got into their photo albums, got all their pictures out of their photo albums. Back in the day, we actually had physical photo albums with like Polaroid pictures. No one had cell phones with pictures. Everybody actually had pictures. And so I gathered all the pictures and put them in a pile and burned them. I was trying to annihilate my past. I was trying to erase myself. And so after 9 months of that, of solid social destruction, I am now completely alone. And I'm in that field behind Casa Bonita. And I had been there for about a month. And I was surviving by stealing free samples from the grocery store and dumpster diving and avoiding the police during school hours, because if they saw me, they would arrest me for truancy. And so...
About what age were you?
This is between 16 and 17.
About 16 and 17. Okay.
Yeah, this is right between 16 and 17. Late 16, early 17. And so because this whole process takes about a year. And so now I'm in that dark phase, and I wake up in the field behind Casa Bonita, and I wake up in the snow, and there's like 2 inches of snow on the ground. And to get up to the store at the top of the hill where I'm stealing 3 samples from to survive, I wasn't just shaking, I was almost seizing. Like I could barely breathe, I could barely move, my arms were shaking, I could barely get up to the top of the hill. I'm in the bathroom, I'm washing my face off, I could barely recognize myself in the mirror, and I think, I got to get some help or I'm going to die. If I don't get some help, I'm going to die. And so across the street from the school that I was nominally at, which is North High here in Colorado, there was a building that said mental health. And I knew last time I went anywhere, they brought my mom in, and that was one of the most toxic times of my life. So I'm not doing that again. So I went in to go to this place that just said mental health, and I went in there cold. And they brought me in, and I saw this young woman. She was in her early 20s, I believe. And I don't really remember much about that conversation, because all I remember is her telling me, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do, I can't help you. And when I walked out of her door, that's the spot. Right there, when I stood on that porch, that's when I finally snapped. And all the scaffolding holding up all that dark and all the small glimmers of hope and everything just kind of collapsed under its own weight. And my brain snapped like a mirror. And I literally felt like shards of glass in my head. And a couple things happened really quickly in succession. I was standing on that porch of the place, and like, bang, 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 bang. A couple things happened in my head. And the first thing that happened was I found out what was at the bottom of that tsunami. When you go to the bottom of the mosh pit and you go all the way to the end of it, all the waves go away, all the violence disappears, and it gets really quiet, and it gets really still. And there isn't any more disturbance, because there isn't any more down to fall to. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to kill me? Okay, cool. I'm going to die. You're going to put me in jail? Okay, cool. They're going to feed me. Like, I don't have any more down. I don't have any more negative to get to. And so right there, as soon as I hit that, a couple things crystallized right in my head. Like I got a flash in my head. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted I had workshopped the plan already out with that group of friends, where to attack. So I knew where to get a gun, because there were gangbangers that hung out of the RTC building that bought and sold drugs on the regular for my family. And so they knew me, I knew them, just on a first name basis, but they knew I wasn't a narc. They bought and sold drugs for my family. And so when the plans crystallized in my head of what I wanted to do was I was either going to go and attack the mall down the street and go into the food court of the mall and kill as many people as I possibly could, or I was going to go to the school food court and kill as many people as I possibly could. And the only difference in the attack was going to be the time of day I got the weapon. If I handed the gun in the daytime, go to the school. If I handed the gun at nighttime, go to the mall. And that was it. But it's important to note 2 things. First thing, neither of those places were what we consider soft targets. The mall had a police station a couple doors down from the food court. And the school had uniformed officers stationed at the main doors, because this was mid-90s Boys in the Hood era where people were bringing in guns and flashing them all the time, before the age of metal detectors. But the reason why I knew these gangbangers had guns is because they brought pistols and stuff in school all the time and would flash them, because they would just do that. And so I went up to one of the gangbangers and like, hey, the other second thing to note is that neither of those places were actually my target. Those were the damage that I was going to cause to make my parents deal with creating me. My real target was my parents. I wanted to make my parents deal with the fact that I existed, But I was the monster that I knew I was, and they never had to take accountability for anything. So I wanted them to have to take accountability for my existence. And so I was going to cause all this damage to make them pay for it. And so I knew to get the gun, I went up to the gangbanger outside the RTC building in front of the school. I said, "Hey, can you get me a gun? Hopefully one that shoots a lot of bullets." Because like, "Yeah, sure, get me an ounce of weed." Now that's not like it is today, where you go to a store or whatever, and it's like cheap. This is back in the '90s, but that's like $300 of illicit narcotics. But I was from a drug dealing, drug using crackhead family, and so that was easy for me to get. I just went to my mom's house, and my brother's buddy is sleeping on my mom's floor, and he had multiple ounces bagged up in his pockets. So I just stole one and took it to the guy. That's an important place to note. The difference between me and my brother is that while I rebelled and left and lived on the streets, he joined in the fun. And that house, my parents' crack house, became his party house. So that's where he brought all his friends to do all his partying and drugging. So he became the man of the house all the way. So that was the dynamic. He joined in, I rebelled. So I just went there and grabbed an ounce of that out of the dude's pocket, took it to the guy. And I've been asked before, okay, how do you grab a whole ounce out of someone's pocket? That's a lot of weed. And in the 90s, we had large pockets. All right. Jinko's pants were a thing. We had big pockets. Okay. So I only say that to get a little bit of levity in the scene. But so I get the weed, bring it to the guy. I'm like, here you go. Here's an ounce. So, okay. Give me 3 days. I'll get that for you. And so I'm set. In 3 days' time, I was going to get the weapon. And as soon as I get the gun, I was either going to go attack the school or go attack the mall. Okay. Now, in that 3-day time, I didn't know what I was doing then, but looking back, I think I was saying goodbye. I was going to people in a much more peaceful way and saying things like, I went to my ex-girlfriend at the time and said, "Thank you for letting me sleep in the gravel outside your window." And I was thanking people for like giving me food. I was giving away all my comic books. Comic books were the only thing I ever carried with me from state to state. And so I would just walk down the street, just hand kids whole stacks of my comic books. And I was just giving things away. And so in that phase, I went to Mike's house and I knocked on his door. And when I knocked on his door, I was in tears. And he brought me inside. He never asked me what I was there for. He never asked me what I was in. Now, Mike knew intimately the hell that I had been living in. Because, mind you, this is between 16 and 17. Slightly before this was the night of my 16th birthday. All right. Here's an example of how much Mike knew about the hell of my life. The night of my 16th birthday, I was at my mom's house for a minute and got in a big physical fight with everybody and got the shit kicked out of me by my mom. Got punched in the face, bloody nose, bloody face, my shirt ripped off of me. I got kicked out of the house with no shirt, bloody face, and Mike was living 3 blocks down the street at the time. So I walked down to Mike's house and I'm sitting at his kitchen table. And mind you, I got bloody face, ripped shirt, 16th birthday. And his mom comes in. He's like, "What's Aaron doing here?" And Mike's like, "Yeah, his mom just kicked the crap out of him." And so my 16th birthday party is Mike's mom coming into the kitchen with a brownie and a giant red table candle stuck in the middle of it and singing happy birthday. That's my 16th birthday party. So Mike knew intimately the hell of my existence, but he didn't ask. He just kept on telling me, "You're a good kid in a shit world." The only thing he kept on saying is, "You're a good kid in a shit world." Sorry for the language, but it's the truth. That's what it said. And
Absolutely.
What he really did, it's not hanging out with a friend that saved my life. It's that when I knocked on Mike's door, I wasn't a human. I was a walking ball of nothing ready to explode. I wasn't just ignored. I was erased. I was gone. I wasn't there to hang out with a friend. I was there to say goodbye. I was there to to finish the chapter and be like, "Thank you. I'm done. Close the page now. We're finished." Like, I wasn't there to plan a tomorrow. I was there to plan a no tomorrow. And what he really did by bringing me inside, he gave me some food, gave me a shower, is that he put the tiny bits of humanity on the bottom shelf of my life. Like, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have to have the base needs of survival. You have to have your food, shelter, your base needs have to be met. I had fallen so completely off the cliff, but I was looking up at that like I was looking at a star in the galaxy. I swear I could barely even see it. And it didn't even feel human. And I can tell you from experience that when someone treats you like a person, when you don't even feel human yourself, they can completely change your entire existence. And that's what he did for me. He gave me love when I didn't even think I deserved it myself. And that's it. But so what he did is I ended up staying with him for about a week. Excuse me, I'm going to take a quick drink. I ended up staying with him for about a week. I never left his house. And what's funny is, up until that point, I couldn't even stay at his house for a day because I was leaving stains. His house was the house I was leaving stains at. And I'm not entirely sure what happened. I really think what he did is he just went to his parents and said, no, Aaron's not leaving. I think something really bad's going to happen. He's not going. And so he didn't make me leave. And what he really did was give me a small frame shift, just to shift my perspective enough to, it was like when I was knocked on his door, it was this tsunami, like just storms, clouds. And what he did was put my feet on the ground for the first time in years and let me take a breath and just be a person and just actually, I have what alcoholics refer to as a moment of clarity. And just a small second of break in the clouds where I was able to reassess and put my feet on the ground for the first time in years. And it saved my life. And he's still my best friend to this day. He's the only person in this world where if he insulted my wife, he'll be like, baby, what'd you do to make me call you a name? Like, he's earned that. He's the uncle to my kids. He's my best friend I've ever had in my whole life. But it's important to note, though, that it's not like a light switch flip. It's not like, ding, everything's better. Now, he had one night with a friend, and that saved his life, and everything's good. That's not how this works. This is a process. And that's why it was good that you mentioned that earlier. This is a process. This is not both a slide in and the progress out, or both a process. You cannot do this overnight. And so the next, what he did was give me that frame shift. But the violence at home was still the same. Crackheads were still the same. Crime at home was still the same. All the abuse at home was still the same. All the degradation of myself was still the same. I just had enough of a moment of clarity to be able to reassess for a bit. Okay. Now that was between 16 and 17. I'm going to finish off the story really quick before you get to questions, by fast forwarding a little bit to the night of my 19th birthday. Okay. The night of my 19th birthday, I was planning on committing suicide. I was planning on killing myself because the depression had spun up almost immediately after what I just described. But with Mike, I got remorseful and ashamed of what had happened. I got very depressed, but it was a normal level of depression, a normal level of remorse. But over time, the depression and the self-loathing had spun up again, but it was a lot more inwardly directed than outward. I got tired of, I just thought I wanted to end me. I wanted to be erased. I didn't want to be there anymore. And so on the night of my 19th birthday, I was going to kill myself, and I was going to do it by overdose. I had stolen a big bag of cocaine from my mom. I had stolen a whole bottle of pills from my mom, and I had gotten a bunch of LSD off the streets. So I had copious amounts of narcotics, like way more drugs that were going to be needed to do the job. And my plan was to live as normal a day as possible and then go to that field behind Casa Bonita and end my life. But during the day, I didn't want anybody to know anything was wrong. I was not outwardly depressed. I wasn't showing any sadness. I was trying my best to be as regular as I could be because I had people intervene in the past. Okay. And so, but I wanted to end my life. And so, since it was my 19th birthday, I wanted to spend my day with my favorite people. So I went to Mike's house. And so we're sitting there hanging out, and Mike's like, hey, we're going to go to my friend Amber's house today. Now, Mike was a very social person, and he had a social circle. One of his friends was a girl named Amber, and they went to art school together. They weren't dating or nothing, but they were good buddies. And over the years, we went over there, hung out, watched movies, listened to music. So I think, cool, that's a great last day. I'm going to go hang out with Mike and Amber, spend it with two of my favorite people, maybe listen to some good music, watch something, hang out, and then I'm going to go to that field and then end my life. That's a great ending. And so we get there, and that's not what I walked into at all. I walked into about 14 people singing happy birthday because they had thrown a surprise birthday party for me. and they had put up a bunch of decorations. And Amber had baked a blueberry peach pie, and I walked past them and dropped all my drugs in the toilet, and that's the last time I ever tried to kill myself. But you know why I really love telling that story is because when we left Mike's house, there was no party waiting for me. Mike called ahead, and he's like, "Hey, I got Aaron in the car. It's his birthday today." Now, Amber already had a bunch of friends over. They had already baked a pie, but they're a bunch of artist people. So they got together, made a bunch of decorations up, threw decorations up in about 5 minutes. Okay. So I walked into a room that fundamentally changed the course of my life and altered my very core of my being that my friend put up in 5 minutes because her friend was having a birthday. So you never know what little tiny bits of kindness that you do that can completely change someone else's life. So if you're hearing this and you know anybody that's went through anything like what I've talked to, even a little bit, if you feel like we need to give love to the ones that we think deserve it the least because they need it the most. That kid in the dark who's sitting there hating himself and telling himself that everybody hates him and that the only way out is even more anger. We need to tell him that he's wrong. We need to tell him that he can make it and that he can exist and make it through it and that there is a way through to the other side, to the light at the end of it. Today, I'm a happy father of 4. I have a beautiful family. I have 2 wonderful grandbabies. My one grandbaby is 6. The other grandbaby is 5 months old. I have a wonderful family. None of my kids are going to be able to do what I do today because they didn't live through any of the hell that I've lived through. Because I use what happened to me as how to parent my own kids. I just do the opposite. So I tell them I love them every day. I'm at every show. I'm at every game. We have to give love to the ones we think deserve it the least. And a lot of times that person is ourselves. So that's my story. So yeah.
Aaron, thank you so much for sharing all that. I mean, that was very heavy, so raw, so real. I just really appreciate you taking the time to share that whole story. And it creates such a good foundation into what we talk about here on this podcast about how we need to have empathy with others. And thank you again for sharing that, because holy cow, that is heavy, and I appreciate it. I have a couple questions for you for that. As far as when you were going through this, you had mentioned that you use cutting as kind of your coping mechanism. I'm just curious, at that time, I'm sure with just what you had going on and the hell that you were going through, were you using drugs at all or anything else that would help you cope through those situations? Or was that the only way that you could find a little bit of peace back then?
So I actually initially had a really strong aversion to drugs because of my crackhead parents.
Okay.
So I started doing LSD at 15, and I didn't do any other drug except for LSD until 19. I didn't smoke my first bowl of weed until 19 years old. And my whole life, I've only ever smoked weed, tripped acid, or done mushrooms. I've never done any of the harder drugs because I saw firsthand what the dangers of it were, and I never saw any of the benefit. I never saw what was fun about smoking crack rock and digging through the carpet looking for it. Like, I never saw the appeal that anybody had about any of this. But it was the drugs were omnipresent, but I just never really took part. My brother did. My brother joined in with all of that. He started experimenting with powders and stuff as a teen, and I just never did. Yeah.
Okay. And with having all that, and I'm just kind of curious about this because you've been through way more than anybody that I've ever met before. And with today, and I'm sure you have some trauma that goes back to that and you have to cope with that. What are some things now that you use as coping mechanisms to get through some of those things that you have had in your past when they maybe start to come up a little bit and you can feel it, maybe a panic attack or something? Or what do you use that maybe could help others that they went through something similar what you went through that has gotten you to this place now where you have 4 kids, you have an awesome wife, you have a great life now? What has gotten you through that?
So the biggest tool I use is transparency. Anytime I feel any kind of those feelings coming on, I communicate it openly and honestly with the people around me. Because one of the things that kind of sadness and depression and self-loathing relies on is secrecy. It relies on I think that you are thinking of me this way, and it's all in my head. And you build your own narrative of what the world thinks of you. And it's always negative. It's always worse than what the reality of it is. It's just like what I tell my kids now when they're worried about doing something. The anticipation of the worry is always worse than the reality of what actually happens. You sit there and you get so scared and so worried about actually doing the thing that doing the thing is can get kind of scary. But when you actually do it, it's not nearly as scary. Then afterwards, like, oh wow, I really can go bungee jumping, or I really can go ride a bike. But you before that, you're so nervous and so scared that you're not sure what you could possibly do. But so transparency and openness and honesty, because there are still times, like legitimately, I've worked through. I personally think I've worked through a large portion of it because I've been able to examine it so thoroughly. And I travel around and speak at every conference and all over the country and different schools. And every time I've tried to examine it from a different level, and I'd never have written down or rehearsed any of the things I do. It's just from the heart, because I use it as like my talk therapy. Now, having said that, I do have issues actually accessing real therapy. And I'm positive people will understand this who are listening, because it is hard to find anybody that can eat my whole elephant. It's hard to find anybody that can take the totality of what I just said and actually be able to absorb that in a competent way without themselves becoming shell-shocked, without themselves having the kind of like, oh my God, kind of like deer in the headlights reaction. And if I can, and here's one thing that's kind of singular to me, other people might not get this because this is the only bit weird, but I personally have more issues with it, because even if I can't find someone that can absorb the trauma side of it, if they can do that, as soon as I talk about how weird it is opening up that trauma side to the whole world and letting strangers poke and prod at that trauma side and dig into it all the time and how strange that is, I've had 2 therapists in session stop and say, oh, well, here's my pain. And they start crying to me and telling me all their diary. And I'm like, I appreciate that, but now you're not my therapist. Like, I get that. So yeah, that's a long way to just reinforce my point. Openness and transparency, because the more we can talk about it, the more we can express these feelings. Not only can we get through it ourselves more, but we give normalcy to those around us, that it's okay. We give permission to the people around us that it's okay to discuss it with them too. So, because one of the most powerful things that has happened to me, I want to share you a cool story because this really ties in. So I spoke at this conference. I think it was in Wisconsin, might have been Montana. And after the conference, they have this poker night, okay? And they have like it was the raffle night. It was for a school resource officers conference. So all these are professionals, it's law enforcement and cops, and everybody has badges and guns and titles longer than my arm, and all these acronyms and stuff, okay? So we're going around to this poker night, and it's all this raffle poker. Everybody's doing the poker to play the raffle. So no one's actually drinking. No one's actually gambling. Just a bunch of cops hanging out. And so, but I'm not a cop. I'm a regular dude. I don't have a law enforcement degree. I don't have an education background. I'm just a regular guy. I work as a head cashier at a hardware store in my day job. So I'm in this poker place. All right. And after this, I got done speaking, and I'm wandering around this poker ring. And this guy comes walking up to me, and he looks like, for lack of a better term, he looks like Sam Elliott. Looks like old grizzled cowboy, like the kind of like the old West sheriff. Like, this guy has stared down some stuff, and he gets the 10,000-yard stare just on the regular. Like, this is the kind of guy that will just chew up life and spit it out. That kind of guy. And he comes walking up to me, and he's got kind of tears in his eyes. Okay. And he's kind of stuttering. And he's like, sir, I just got to say. And I could tell this guy wasn't a hugger. He didn't want to hug. So I put my hand on his shoulder. And I said, sir, it's going to be okay. And he started to open up back. Son, I just have to tell you, my son, he tried to commit suicide a couple years ago. My partner, he killed himself last year. I battle those demons all the time. And I saw this guy look up. This gentleman looked up at a room of his peers, and I saw fear in this man's eyes. Real fear. Now, this is the man that has stood down assault weapons, has stood down SWAT activities, has had people dying in his arms from gunshot wounds, probably has lost more loss in the physical way that I could ever comprehend, probably has seen more demons than I could even think of. And yet I'm seeing him look around this room of his peers having a peaceful game, and he has fear in his eyes of whether or not he can access those emotions. Can he cry? Can he be honest with his peers? And so he does. He fights through it, and he starts to cry. We end up hanging out there for a while. We end up talking all night long. And that, to me, that happens at that level. And then that also happens, that fear of honesty, that happens at the bottom level of help too. Because if you're the kid going to get help, if you are the kid who is me and you're seeking to get help, it's like walking into a room full of spikes that are pointed at your own head. And you don't know what you might say. It can cause the jaws of death to snap down and bite your head off. Because the person across from you has all these mandatory reporting lines. And they have all these things that you can't say. And they know what you can't say. But you don't know what you can't say. And if your internal vocabulary is anger and aggression and violence and degradation, and all the adults around you modeled by lying and stealing and cheating and anger and violence and aggression, and all your friends do nothing but have anger and violence and degradation and aggression, you expect that kid to walk into a counseling office and sit down and say, "Oh, I'm feeling emotionally dysregulated today." No. He's going to express himself the way he expresses himself, and that's going to be received how it's received. And most likely in that scenario is going to be received badly because he's going to express himself in an aggressive manner. But we have to give these kids some that kid. You're immediately doing some math in your head. Okay. This person across from me, they say they're going to help me. All right. So does this help or does this help hurt? I have to figure out if your help helps me or does your help hurt me? Because that guy said he's going to help me and he molested me. That guy said he's going to help me and turn me into the cops. That guy said he's going to help me and completely lied to me and stole from me. Does your help me or does your help hurt? But I don't have any way to tell that right now. Okay. So I have to put a test to you because the other equation I have for you is how honest with you can I be about the hell of my life before you change your opinion of me? How honest with you can I be about myself before you judge me for me? Because if the more honest with you that I am about my reality, does that make you shift and dislike me? Does that make you shift and be afraid of me just because I'm telling the reality of my life that I'm living? Does that make you recoil in fear? But I don't have any way to tell that. Okay, so I have to go through some math too with that. Okay, so you say you can take me. All right, cool. You say you can help me. Okay, cool. How about you take me out of 6? Okay, cool. You take me out of 6. Take me out of 7? Okay, cool. Take me out of 7. How about out of 8? Take me out of 8? Because every day I wake up at a 10. 10 is the start of my day. So if you left at a 7 or an 8, then leave now, dude. There's no reason for me to talk to you. Why am I even bothering with you if you can't take it? Okay, you can take me out of 10. Good for you. How about out of 12? You take me out of 12? How about out of 15? How about out of 15 tomorrow? How about out of 15 next week? Because I got to make sure you're not full of crap. I got to make sure that you're not faking, that you aren't full of stuff and telling me, blowing smoke up my butt, telling me you're going to be helping me and then quitting halfway through when stuff gets hard. Because stuff gets hard. And 15 isn't even the limit of where I'm going to hit. So how much can I go with you? Okay, you can take me to 15 next week. That's great. Cool. Now I can start backing down. Now I can go back down to a 12. And I can back down to a 10. Now I'm back down to a 7 and a 2. Now I'm bringing my friends to you because you're the trusted adult that I actually can be myself to. That I can actually exist as me to. And that's how you have, I've seen this firsthand, how you have entire school districts that have menus of assistance that they think they're offering to their students. An entire police district that have menus of assistance they think they're offering to their people, of counseling and checklists and journals and systems. And they get no traction at all. But the choir teacher's assistant knows everything. Because that guy or woman, let the kids be a person. Let them be who they are in that classroom. And I honestly think, now to talk about something tangible, if anybody's listening in the education space and you happen to be having some red people in that, use your choir class and your arts classes as a resource. Because I've spoken at over 30 schools across the country, over 30 school districts. I've said this to every single one of them. I've never been proven wrong, but please tell me if I am. I personally believe that every choir class is between 40 to 60% of the class is on either the identity/emotional spectrum. Because it's like a magnet for kids like that, because it finally it's the only class in the school day that doesn't have any peril of failure. There's no chance that in the choir classes, you're going to have to write a big paper with an F on it, take it home to your abusive parents, and explain why you failed that day. And if you don't want to participate that day, you stand there, you just wiggle your lips and go off. You're fine. No one's going to care. You want to scream out? You're cool. No one's going to care. You know, you want to express yourself, you could express yourself. And because of that, the choir teachers tend to be much more understanding. And you get a lot more traction with the students. The students, most schools, the kids love the choir teacher because that's more like the mom of the school or the dad of the school. And they have all this big things around them because there's no chance of failure. There's no chance that guy is going to penalize me for my existence. Because how are you going to do homework?
That's fantastic.
How are you going to do homework if
Yes.
your parents are crackheads? You know?
Right. No, I love that. I love that you say that too. And I was a teacher, I'm a professor now, and, you know, police officer, and having that background and all the things that you're talking about are so real, because when you said that your coping is, you know, you want to be open about it, it's tough for me to imagine who you could be open with about that stuff. And you're right. I mean, you look at that and it's hard. I've had some of my even police officer friends that have had nightmares where after a critical incident, they go to share and they don't get any help back, and they're judged from what they do. You know, it's one of these things I couldn't imagine for you at that time. Who are you?
You want to hear one of the scariest stories of this level? Okay. I'm not going to tell you who, I'm not going to give you details because of classification. But I have spoken to the top levels of the FBI. Okay. And I was sat across from an FBI agent who, because I wasn't in the chain of peril, because of that jaws of death, the snap down, that happens again at the top. Because if you're a federal officer and you try to go get help, try to go to counseling, it can be looked at like a negative, like a demerit, like now you're a weakness, now you're a liability, like now you might be a problem on scene. So now might get removed from your assignments. You might get taken off from your duties. And even 5 years down the line, if it's discovered that you went to certain kinds of mental health counseling, you can still get stripped of what your duty is. Okay. So it's this big sword of Damocles that's hanging over the heads of people. And if this guy was one of the first responders to one of the worst incidents that we've ever had as a country, and he can't talk about it because if he goes to get counseling, he can get removed. So I'm having dinner with him, and he's finally across this table from somebody that's not in his chain of peril. And so I get a tearful download from a gentleman who would blow your mind with the qualifications of this gentleman. And the fact that phenomenon happens, the fact that the same reaching out for help happens at the bottom as it does at the top, that shows me that we're all really just human, that this is a bunch of people trying to navigate this stuff and trying to make it through life and trying to figure out a way through it. And I've seen the PTSD in some of these officers' eyes, and I recognize it in the PTSD I see in the kids' eyes in the homeless shelter. You know, like it's really similar. So after I came out with my story, I had this really profound moment when on my first big explosion of media, when I first came out on the news with this, I wrote a Facebook post and it blew up all over the news. And I had this big moment where I started getting hit with all these mail from all over the world. And it was literally all over the planet hey, that was cool, but hey, that's cool. And here's my diary. Here's all my pain that goes with it. I got the expressions of abuse and pain from over 30,000 people from every walk of life, all over the world. India, Pakistan, Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, every state, every state in South America, North America, Europe, all over the planet. And I saw something really profound. And ever since then, it's been one of my driving principles, is that there isn't anything different from the pain that I was feeling on my absolute worst when I was about to shoot up a school, and what a model feels when she's outside in her car throwing up in a cup, or she goes to a photo shoot. That those aren't different. They look entirely different. They look like two different animals. But at the heart, it's self-immolation and self-destruction. I'm not good enough. I need to break myself to fit my own world. And it's the same pain that the gangbanger feels in Chicago, telling me that the bully's in his town. He can't talk about the bully because the kids in his clique will kill him. And the kid in Afghanistan who told me that he can't talk about the bullying in his town because the kids in his village will kill him. Like we think that these things are different, but humanity's experience is way more shared than we would ever imagine. And I think the more we can see, it might be the only thing that brings us together. Because I've had the same tearful discussions with Republicans and Democrats and atheists and Christians and every walk of life. Like, it's on the sense that we've all at one time felt like I'm not good enough. And something in me is wrong and I need to fix it to make myself better. We've all had that. And if that's the one thing that we can have to bring us together, then maybe we can start healing this giant rift we have growing as a society. Because I don't see any difference in me and you.
I completely agree with you on that. And that leads me to my next question. And this is something that I feel with you, especially very important. And I'd love for you to share about this is for people listening who worry about saying the wrong thing. Let's just say, the wrong thing when checking in on someone, what actually helps and what doesn't. And that I think is just, obviously you had this connection with Mike. So I'll just repeat the question for people listening who worry about saying the wrong thing when checking in on someone. What actually helped you versus what doesn't? What should people kind of pay attention to with that?
Again, I will go back to my initial answer, transparency and honesty. Because the best thing to say to someone if you're feeling like you're not sure about the question they asked? I'm not sure about the question they asked. That's like,
Okay.
that's, that's the best
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's like if you're like, well, I don't know what words to say because I want to make sure I'm really sensitive to your feelings. Say that. Like, be honest and be real. The more honest and real you can be, the less testing I have to be to make sure that you're not faking who you are. Like, I need to be sure that you're true with me and you're honest with me. And the more honest you can be right up the jump, I'm not demanding that you conform to me. I'm not saying you have to be in agreement with everything I say. Be an honest human. Be a real person sitting across from me. A real person hearing my story is going to feel a bit outlandish about it. It's going to feel a bit taken aback. Like if the counselor sat there and said, dude, I need a minute. That's a lot. Give me a second. I'm going to absorb that and I'll get back with you. Like, that's different than reflecting their pain back to me. But taking a moment to absorb, everybody needs to do that, man. Like, that's a human response. Like, it's the more we can treat people like real people and just, I don't really have a conception of saying the wrong thing. And I deal with people in depression and that kind of stuff all on the regular. I don't really have a concept. I think that's an off-base concept of be careful about not saying the wrong thing, because that might have gotten us where we are. The reluctance to say the hard things, the reluctance to touch the buttons that people think that we shouldn't touch, because that's where depression and conspiracy and self-loathing lies, is in hiding and in deception and in secrecy and in no one seeing it. And then but I can't tell you my whole feeling, because if I tell you my feeling, you might judge me for that. So I'm going to give you the sanitized version because that's PC. So, and I expect that you're only going to ask me the sanitized questions because that's PC too, that we're going to be, and PC in the generalized sense. I'm not talking about actually political anything. I'm talking about that I need to be so super sensitive to the people, to your feelings and to my feelings. I need to sanitize the conversation so much. George Carlin had a routine about this, and it really does fit perfectly. It was the difference between shell shock. So in World War I, there was a combat condition called shell shock. All right. That's what happened when someone was in battle and their nervous system was stressed beyond the point of usefulness. Like their nervous system had snapped and there was no coming back in, was shell shock. Okay. And the people had real serious psychological damage from it. That was World War I. That was almost, at this point, that was almost 100 years ago. Okay. Now, after that, we move into the next war. We got World War II. And World War II, it goes from shell shock to battle fatigue. Now, battle fatigue sounds a little less human than shell shock. Shell shock almost sounds like the weapons themselves. That almost sound like the bullets shell shock. Okay. Now, battle fatigue gives a little more space. Battle fatigue. That's World War II. And we move into Vietnam War. And then we move into the Korean War, we move into Afghanistan, and battle fatigue has now become post-traumatic stress disorder. Not only has all the humanity been stripped from it, but we've even added a hyphen. And now post-traumatic stress disorder has become an object for people to be cured of and a symptom for people to be looked for, instead of shell shock, which is the experience of having yourself destroyed in battle. We've stripped all the humanity out of it. We've stripped all the compassion out of it, and we've turned it into a clinical phrase. I think, like George Carlin said, maybe if we call our PTSD, instead of calling it PTSD, we still call it shell shock. Maybe our battle-tested men and women will be able to get the help that they so dearly deserve. Because maybe we give them the attention that this is a human thing, because it's human damage and real, long-lasting, severe tragedy to people. And that's it. The more honesty we can have in our engagements, instead of talking about, well, I have to make sure I dance around it. I don't want to talk about your mental health problem because it's a mental health problem. It's very oblique. Mental health is a very big gray cloud. And if I ask too many probing questions, then it's too personal. And you might get offended if I ask you something that's too personal. Okay. Instead of that, I talk about how I was depressed and neglected and abused because I felt like I was worthless and I felt like I was nothing. Because hopefully the next time you guys talk to somebody who has that kind of feeling, you'll see the specificity of the problem and the human behind that, and not just the big gray oblique cloud that is mental health. Because that's this big gray fuzz. It just obfuscates for the purpose of obfuscation. And honestly, the same thing happens on the other side of the spectrum with gun control. You talk about gun control, you get lost in the minutiae of the details. Is that, what kind of ammunition is that? Is that a bump stock? Is that an assault rifle? What kind of gun is that? You lose sight of the actual goal of the argument, which is keep weapons that can kill a lot of people out of the hands of someone like I was 30 years ago. That should be a goal we can all agree on. I don't care about the dude that has 30 rifles. You're like a car collector. I don't care about you. You're not the one I'm worried about. I don't care about the guy that wants one rifle. I care about the guy that wants one gun. Because that's the problem that I'm facing. I don't see the problem with, now, barring the really weird exceptions like the Vegas shooter, there's always the exception that proves the rule. But sure, most of the time, it's not the gun nut, it's not the gun collector, it's not the person who's the aficionado that's going to go off and do the attack. That's like being afraid of a car collector and thinking that he's the one that's going to mow down the crowd. No, it's the dude that just rented the U-Haul. Like the people who take it all back to 9/11, the hijackers that took down the towers, they didn't learn how to land the planes. They just learned how to fly the plane.
It's a good point. And with that, Aaron, kind of getting back to that, when you were going to plan your attack and you were looking at the mall in school, was there ever something in your mind, just curious, if you would have ran into someone you knew there that you just wanted, you were talking about this mall in school and that you just wanted to hurt as many people as you could in those places. If you would have ran into someone you knew that was positive towards you, that you had a good relationship with, do you think that would have altered anything during that time, or was that just not part
No, I don't, because it wasn't directed at the people. The people were actually completely ancillary. That's one of the things. So that's an element that I think that more people need to look at when they're looking at these mass shootings. It's really hard to impose a logical situation on an illogical situation after the fact. Like, I was in an insane spot thinking insane thoughts. And so think of it like tunnel vision. Like, your vision just gets narrower and narrower and narrower, and everything else to the side of it just turns into static. Like it just like myopically just drops down. That's kind of what it was getting like for me. Like, the rest of the world was boiling away. And so there really wasn't any conception of the people involved so much as the damage that I could cause because of it. Like, the same way my humanity was getting boiled away, my conception of everybody else's humanity was also getting boiled away. Was my grasp with that kind of reality. And I've seen that repeatedly looking at different case studies from mass shootings that I've been privy to. That seems to be a more prevalent than not kind of phenomenon. Like, once you pass the for lack of a better term, the black hole. What's the boundary to the black hole? I'm trying to think of there's the boundary line name for it. I'm trying to think of the event horizon. Once you pass the event horizon,
Okay.
then you're just kind of stuck in it.
Okay. And with that, when you just with the planning and the attack and everything, what was the biggest thing that Mike did and what he gave from an empathy side of things that really helped you? And would you say that was more, he was just being a friend? He wouldn't ask you about your day. He wouldn't do anything like that. What was that core thing you think that he did that really helped?
Well, here's a way to imagine it. Imagine that you're walking through the worst, darkest forest, and you're surrounded by wolves and screaming and dark, and like everywhere's just dangerous. And all of a sudden you look to the side and there's a dude with a candle just chilling. That's kind of what it was like. Like, it was I described Mike as my island of normalcy and my ocean of chaos. He was the one little bit that didn't shift, he He never treated me like I was broken. He never treated me like I was a monster. He didn't treat me like I was anything other than a respectful person. And at that time, I was completely convinced that I was either a monster or broken or both. That it was I was not a person. Had completely fallen off the cliff, and he didn't. It wasn't that he didn't let me go; is that he didn't notice I was sliding. Like he noticed, but like, you know what I mean? Like he didn't. It's the kind of like when your friend doesn't even treat you like you're messing up. You know, like it was. Okay. And if you ask Mike what he did, he just says, "I just did what a friend's supposed to do." And it's the simplest things. It's the littlest bits. And yeah, he really was just my island of normal in my ocean of chaos. He was the one bit of my life that never changed. No matter how many times my chaos slammed against it, no matter how many times it crashed against him, he just didn't shift. He never judged me for who I was. He never changed his opinion of me because of my honesty in my existence. I could be as honest about the hell of my life as I was. And he never saw, here's the difference. Here's the base difference. The kids in that disaster groupie house saw me as my pain. I was the pain that I brought to that event. I was the entertainment. I was the dark unicorn. Mike saw me as a kid in pain. And that's a big difference. I wasn't the kid in pain to that friend. I was the pain. For Mike, I was a kid in pain. And he saw the kid part first.
So with that, and you and Mike were good friends then, with that, let's just say, and for the listeners out there that maybe notice their coworkers, or maybe it's that, teacher that notices that student that they're going through a rough time, that maybe some of these things are starting to happen. They're starting to see that pain that someone's going through, little things in their normal behavior is a little bit off. What would you recommend is just a good approach to do that? Again, when we talked a little bit about not saying the wrong thing, that has deal, but what would you say for those people that, hey, I noticed a little bit of behavior change here, not really knowing this person's past, they're more an acquaintance, but what can you do to help out that situation?
So it all comes back to the same kind of response where, first off, the first answer to your response is, again, transparency and honesty, and just be like, look, dude, I'm a little concerned about you. Because the more honest you are with the person, I can't express to you how unreal it feels when everybody around you thinks that you're broken. When everybody around you treats you like you're broken, it's just as depersonalizing and being treated like a monster. Like if everybody around you, here, think of this. Let's say that you're the kid going to school and you're depressed, but every adult you come in contact with checks in with you about your pain. Everybody, every adult you come in contact with. Did you go through your counseling? Did you do your steps? How's your family today? How's your depression? How's your self-harm? Every single person you come in contact with is checking in with you about your pain. When do you ever get to be a kid?
You don't.
When do you ever get to be a kid? And when do you ever get to escape that hell? When do you ever get to have a release from that instead of carrying it with you and covering it? And those are the same people, though, that are telling you need to move past it and let it go and figure out a way to move out of it, are the ones checking in with it all the time to make sure it's there for you, make sure it's covering you up all the time, make sure it's always there over their story with you. And that's one of the biases that adults in situations tend to have. So the honesty and transparency with it, and just be as real and human as you can, because when you're in the dark and you're looking for help, the thing that you will seek out like a moth to the flame is a real human interaction. Real, actual human interaction. Not just being treated like I'm marking off a check on your checklist or I'm an obligation you have to fulfill. An actual human interaction. And if you want a tip on how to do that, I have 2 tips, okay? 2 tips let's say you're a counselor and or a teacher, and you have someone who is coming into your room and you want to connect with them, okay? They came to you to come reach out. How do you connect with this kid? Now, I have one that's quick and dirty you can do right on the spot. Another one that requires a little bit more prep, but is a lot more effective, okay? So this one, quick and dirty, is do something that's small and stupid that makes you human. Something tiny. Nothing that's going to break protocol. Nothing that's going to violate procedure. Don't like reveal your whatever. Don't break your rules. But spill your coffee. Play a stupid song. To have your shirt buttoned wrong. Do something that makes you a fallible human. Something that can make you have a mistake. Even if it's not funny, like, haha, bring you into my joke. something that makes you look like you can potentially fail at what you're doing. Because having a person with a job across from you is different than having a counselor. Now, if you sat down and I was like, oh, that's Drew, who has the job as counselor, and I'm Aaron, who has the job as student, instead of counselor and student, then we can actually meet as humans. Okay? So do something small and stupid that makes you fallible. Not that makes you funny, not that makes you cute, but fallible. Something that makes you able to be not just the armor of your position. Because people, especially in positions of trust, positions of authority, tend to rely on that armor of their position. And they tend to rely on I need to show that I'm the full, stable adult. I have everything completely under wraps. I have my shirt completely buttoned up. Everything's completely straight. I need to be put a professional face. And that's great for everybody except for the kid who's just craving a real human to talk to. Think of it like when you're talking on the phone and you're calling a line on the phone. How often do you man, I don't want an automated line. Can I just get a human to talk to?
Yes.
I don't need a machine. I need a human, please. That's what this is. Okay. They want a human to talk to. And now, if you get a little more prep time, the second one is a lot more effective. All right. Now, the best thing you can do is learn something about something that they like and that they didn't tell you about and take it to them on purpose. So, for me, I like comic books. All right. Now, if I have ever come in contact with a teacher that was sat down next to me and was like, hey, you like Archangel? I would be like, holy crap. Hold on a second. You know comic books, you know X-Men, and you know who Archangel is? Holy crap. I need to know who you are. You're my friend. Let's do all that test right away. You're my instant buddy. Now, that's a different phenomenon than sitting next to me and saying, oh, you like comic books? Do you like the X-Men? Do you like Archangel? That's different. That's an adult searching for breadcrumbs. Then you're trying to question me to get your answer. But if you jumped 2 steps ahead and you brought that to me, oh, you like Archangel? I check it out. I used to read that X-Force series. Holy crap, dude. Not only do I speak your language, but now you can speak my language. And now I can have immediate trusting conversation with you because you took the time to know what I care about that I didn't have to tell you and showed me the respect that I'm a human worthy of that respect. It's like if you're hanging out with your buddies and you learn that one of your buddies is into fishing, you might want to learn how to do other fishing before you go hang out with a buddy. You might want to learn how to talk football before going out with your sports friend. It's that same kind of phenomenon. At the heart of it, I really don't think there's any difference between dealing with a student in the dark and dealing with your fellow professional sitting at the bar. There shouldn't be, at least. Because right now there is. Right now there's a big difference between the two of them. Because if we're sitting with your student, he comes into you, you're going to give him your checklist, you're going to give him your systems, you're going to give him all your procedures. But if your guy's sitting next to you at your bar, your coworker, the police officer who's been sitting with you in the service and going through the stuff and has that PTSD that you recognize and you've both been through it, and he looks at you with tears in his eyes and he tells you the same thing the kid in your class told you today, and he just says, man, I'm really depressed. I don't know what to do. I feel like the dark is just looking at me and I'm looking back at it. You're probably not going to give him your checklist. You're probably not going to give him your journal. You're probably going to sit next to him and say, dude, I'm with you. I'm with you, man. You're not alone. I'm with you, brother. You're okay. You can make it. Now, what's the difference between those two people? Only difference I see is that you know more about your friend and you care more about your friend. That's it. So if that's the only difference, then learn more and care more about the first
one. Gain good rapport.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Gain real
Absolutely.
Gain real rapport.
Real rapport.
Real human rapport. Because rapport in a psychological sense is a difference. Rapport is one of the phenomena that I've actually had a little bit of issue with, only in the generalist terms, and if you can tell by the conversation I'm just having, is that it tends to be more codified. It tends to be, I want to check out this checklist and how to empathize and how to get this rapport established. I can understand that from a functional, scientific value view. I understand the purpose of that. I'm not poo-pooing that entire concept entirely. But at the same time, there has to be some kind of space for real human interaction where I can really talk about real human feelings and not feel like I'm talking to a recording,
For sure. No, that makes sense. And I like how you established that. And that was when you're actually bringing the comic book versus doing the breadcrumb trail. And I get where you're going with that.
Yeah.
Say, Aaron, if you could could leave listeners with one simple human action they can take this week to make someone feel seen, what would it be? This kind of to wrap things up here. What would it be as, the main part of your message here? What would you say for that?
You want to make someone feel seen? Share your silly with them. Share your own silly with them. Share, because everybody's craving their silly too. Share your silly with them and let them share their silly with you. I bet you, if you share your silly thing, whatever you think is silly, with the next 5 people you meet, someone's going to smile at you and laugh at you and have a fun time with you. And if someone sees you smiling and having a fun time and talking about something silly, someone's going to join in talking about silly things with you. Next thing you know, you're going to have 4 or 5 people standing around talking about something silly. You're going to have a whole fun conversation going on. Everybody's laughing. And all you did was start talking about Legos. Like what you talk about something silly. Like that, if we spend more time in the real human nature of conversation, the real joy of life. The best thing in life is the smile of another person. The best thing you can get. So give it as much as you can get. Give love to the ones that you think deserve it the least, because they need it the most.
I love that. Aaron, how can people get a hold of you to, either have you come out and speak for them, or if they have some questions for you, how can people get a hold of you?
I'm very easy to get a hold of. You can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Aaron Stark. You can email me at aaronstarkauthor@gmail.com. I am available to speak everywhere. I speak regularly all over the country. Next week, I'm actually flying out to be keynote speaker at the NASRO conference, the National School Resource Officers Conference in Orlando. And then I was flying the very next day to LA to keynote for the Irvine, California Unified School District. And we'll have 4 or 5 more events this year. And I will talk to anybody, anywhere. I'm just a regular guy. I try to do whatever I can to make people see the path of that dark and how easy it is to help someone get off of it. So thank you for this time, Drew. I really appreciate it. It's been fun talking to you.
Awesome. A huge thank you to Aaron Stark for having the courage to share his story with honesty and heart. Conversations like this remind us that behind every struggle is a human being who wants to be seen, heard, and valued. If you take one thing from today, let it be this. Empathy matters, checking in matters, and small moments of care can change the trajectory of a life. Thanks for listening, and remember, iron sharpens iron, but empathy keeps us human. Thanks for spending time with us today on Iron and Empathy Podcast. Thank you, Aaron Stark.
Thank you very much, Drew.